Hey, I have a pimple patch right here. Um, she's a big one, and I will not be taking any further questions on it. Thank you. Hey, it's me, the guy with the wildly inconsistent backgrounds. So, everyone knows that modern photography is 50% capturing and 50% editing, right? Maybe that's just me. At least for events like weddings and concerts, I find that to be the case. You got to capture the raw moment. And of course, that's important, obviously. But editing really lets you bring out the details that are most important to that photo or remove distractions, adding details like a duck. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you could do that. Now, before we go any deeper, please like and subscribe. Just a reminder, every like is a pet of this otter. Please don't leave him on pet. He was very upset last time. Cropping, white balance, exposure adjustments. These things are as old as photography itself. Ever since we started developing photos, we have been making adjustments to color and contrast. It's about expressing what the photographer sees, and those adjustments help tell whatever story the photographer wants, even if that's just developing some kind of cohesive style. So don't come for me all up in arms about photo editing. It's all subjective. This is art, and this is a duck. So today, I thought I would take you through my process of editing some wedding photos, and I wanted to touch on my workflow a little bit. And just so you know, I'm not some random guy. I've shot about 100 weddings in the past 3 years. A little bit more photo than video, but still many photo weddings. I know what I'm doing, and I'm tired. After I'm finished a shoot, I usually come home and cry. I usually come home and dump the cards into a new folder on my hard drive. That backs up automatically to a cloud storage service. And for all my working projects, I make an additional backup to a second hard drive. I don't clear any cards until I have at least those 3 backups locked in. As someone once said, if you don't have it twice, you don't have it at all. And if you don't have it 3 times, then it's 7 years bad luck. Or once everything is backed up and an inconvenient amount of time has passed, I'll usually revisit the photos. I use Photo Mechanic to go through all of my photos to cull. I've actually been loving Photo Mechanic instead of Lightroom for the culling and organizing process. It's just really fast and it processes things like lightning. This isn't sponsored, but it could be. I am open for business. Once I've done that, I import only the selected photos into Lightroom. This helps keep me organized, and I have a much smoother time in Lightroom, a lot less files to go through and that kind of thing. So I have 3 examples here of tight, medium, and wide shots, and I'm going to go through and edit each of them from start to finish so you can see what my process looks like. Over to editing, Josh. Thanks, Josh. You tell them all about the pimple patch? Great. So first things first, I've got this wide shot of this lovely couple walking through this kind of windy path. This is on a golf course. And no golfers because it was closed. So pretty lucky for us. Now for this photo, I wanted them to be in a beam of light, but I wanted them to be separated from the background. So there was this one spot where you can see that the shadow is both behind them and in front of them, but they're still in the beam of light, which gives them some nice background separation. So first of all, I want to look for any immediate distractions. Wonderful. A couple of things in the back here. Just gonna get rid of just this little tiny dot here. It's kind of catching my eye. This little pink flag here. Just these little tiny things. Just want to get them out of there. And then after that, my overall approach is to edit it similar to how I would edit landscapes. So I like to kind of find my exposure. I bring the highlights all the way down, I bring the shadows all the way up, and I look at my subject. And I look at my subject and I kind of play with the exposure a little bit until I'm happy. I know they're a little bit dark in the shadows there, and then I'll bring everything back down once we're ready here. and just a little before and then after right there, just to see where we're at. I think actually we can get away with a little bit more of the shadows being added back there. Beautiful. That's looking pretty tasty so far. Honestly, the white balance is looking pretty great. That's usually something I'd touch right now, but I did set it in camera and I'm still pretty happy. After that, I like to come in here to my color mixer. I like to play with the colors a little bit. So right now I'm getting a lot of yellow, getting a lot of green. I'm gonna bring down the yellow a touch, gonna bring down the green quite a bit. I do like a moodier green in my photos. I also am gonna bring down the blue a touch because I want the kind of orangey glow to sing a little bit. I've got some pinkish and magenta on the path there, I think I see. Get rid of that, a little bit of that there. Gonna bring down the orange just a touch and the yellow just a touch, so it's not quite so vibrant. And then I'll go into the hue selection here, and for this stuff I do really like to just kind of play around and see what feels good. My eye, I don't like to go too crazy. I do like slightly more tealy blue. Beautiful, that's looking very good. Now, to make everything kind of stylized to the way that we usually like to style our wedding photos, I do like to roll off the highlights there, similar as to what I would want my video to look like. And then I also do like to bring up our blacks, usually to something like 15 or 16 or so. And then I bring back our shadow. Might be a bit too much, so let's... Oh no! Let's try like 8 on. There'll be a size 8 there, please. Size 8, please. It's looking pretty good so far in our blacks. I'm just gonna add a touch more of the shadows. Take away a little bit of the whites. Beautiful. Now, usually what I like to do is just add a little bit more shadow to kind of draw our eyes into the photo and focus a little bit more on our subject. And so I'm going to carve out a little bit of space here, just in the foreground. And I'm gonna follow this hill here. I don't like to add shadows where there might not be any, or it's like make things look too sculpted. I'm just trying to do some little slight adjustments, some little tiny adjustments. And I am going to take a little bit more of the sky in there. Oh, that's looking pretty magical. Pretty magical so far. For detail, I'll usually add like just a little bit of sharpening, and I will take this mask up. If you hold Alt and drag this along, you can actually see the area and range that is being affected, which is that black and white stuff there. Not really seeing much of noise going on here. ISO's 400, so really nothing. Lens corrections always on. I always turn these bad boys on. I feel like it does make a fairly big difference. However, this one with the vignette I don't like, so we're gonna add a little bit of that back in there. And you know what? Looking at everything, I am going to add a little bit of yellow in. I feel like it's maybe a touch too blue. And maybe a touch pink as well. And then again, just sitting with the image for a sec, I'm also, I think, wanting it to be a little bit more tight to the path here. You know, it's funny, you edit a photo and you take like a long time to do that, and then you walk away for like a minute and then come back and it's like, oh, I'm blind. It looks terrible. Now, there's a lot of other things that we could probably do to this photo if we wanted to spend some more time going in and adding highlights. You could mask out some of these trees and add like, or decrease the clarity a little bit to add like a little bit of a dreamy kind of look. Like there's endless things you could do. But to be nice and general, this is kind of where I would land with something like this as a nice, tight, quick edit. It looks nice, it looks neutral, it's timeless. This is a photo that you could look back on in years and it's not hyper stylized, it's not anything super crazy. Okay, photo number 2. We got this one. Yeah, this is out of camera. So a great capture. Look at the light already coming in. It's gorgeous. This is our couple standing in front of the mountains. The backdrop helps. Okay, I'm not gonna lie about that. And the clouds really clouding that day. Absolutely. So first things first with this one, I'm gonna try to frame them up, make sure everything is nice and square and level. I'm gonna bring them kind of right to the bottom here. I think I can get away with a little bit more of an angle. I just kind of want them to be standing on the bottom of the photo there with a little bit of grass holding them up. I'm going to go into our lens correction. It's already on. Just remove chromatic aberration. I don't see any. It's not too contrasty of an image with the clouds. And then again, to find my nice exposure, it's just a little trick I do. I like it. You know, you might not, and that's fine. You're wrong, but that's fine. So again, bomb out the highlights, increase the shadows. And then I'm just looking at my couple here. I'm seeing what they look like and what happens with the exposure as I increase or decrease. I do like this one, I think a little bit on the brighter side here, so I'm gonna leave it there. Very slight. Yeah, I'm not wanting to mess a ton up here. And then we just add back in our contrast. I want to make sure he's not too dark there. That looks good. Decrease our white point a little bit. Awesome. Don't usually do too much with these. Sometimes I'll decrease the texture by like 5 or so, especially with like some more close-up type things. Spoilers for the next one. So that's looking pretty good so far. Just again, double checking on this white balance here. It looks pretty good. I do really try to nail it in camera. It just saves a lot of second guessing in editing, and so yeah, I try to keep it natural. I feel like if I look at her skin here, she's kind of got that glow, and so I'm not sure if it's coming out a little like a touch pink, so might go into the color mixer now and do point color. I'm gonna grab a piece of the skin there, and then I'm just going to play around with this ever so slightly. Skin tones are definitely the most important thing when photographing a wedding. Like, I want the couple's skin to look like skin and not like they're from another planet. And lately I have been decreasing the luminance a little bit as well. I find it evens out the skin tone a little bit more than what I used to have, and so I zoom out. That looks awesome. That looks nice and neutral. Now, again, with wedding photos, I do stylize. I have a brand, and so I do kind of do similar coloring for all of my photos just to keep it looking cohesive. But of course, every photo is unique and is individual, and each photo set necessitates that. So, touch of teal, but I'm going to desaturate it a little. I'm going to desaturate our yellows as well. I'm going to bring down the oranges just a touch. Careful with the oranges and the reds. They are our skin tones. And then I'm not sure if I'm seeing a lot of red in her face. I'm not. So it's just my silly little eyes. Beep, 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 beep. And I do, again, like a bit of a moodier, darker yellow and green. Yellows and greens can be the most distracting in photos with people in them. Amazing. Okay, let's get our tone curve locked in here. The tone curve for me is the thing that makes my images the most cohesive. I feel like you can do a lot with the colors, but if your tone curve is like wildly different for every photo, then I feel like sometimes it loses its cohesiveness, especially if we're like talking about, you know, Instagram posts and those kinds of things, or like photos on your website and whatnot. This tone curve has made a very large difference. Oh, that looks bad. Let's bring it up a little. I like something like that. I like it. Next thing would be if we do, again, want to accentuate anything using masks. I could go over and like draw in this light a little bit more. I feel like I don't want to overcook it. You could go into the clouds and kind of enhance the individual. I see there's like some warmer colors kind of punching through just the bottoms of the clouds. Like you could go in and punch those up if you wanted. But personally, I really like where this is sitting. I may add a little mask just to the bottom here, just to give it like the tiniest dream look. And all I'm gonna do is decrease the clarity by like subtle little nod there. One other thing that I do like to bring to people's attention. Oh wait, gotta do my detail. Bring it up. It kind of defaults to like a 0 mask, and I just find sometimes it makes the image look too sharp. I like a softer image. This is softer. So one thing, yeah, I do like to bring people's attention to is the calibration tool down here. Now, this is something I think gets overlooked a lot, and it can be really useful. Like, do you see how this changes a lot of things? Each pixel is made up of the 3 colors, red, green, and blue. And if I'm understanding this correctly, you're basically changing the value of all 3 of those colors and how they relate to each other at the same time. So you're changing the value of 1 pixel, but its blue value in turn, which does affect the other colors, which is why it's not just affecting the blue, or this is affecting the green, or this is affecting the red. It does affect all things kind of at the same time. So sometimes I like to come in here, I like to swing things to either side just to see kind of what that's doing to the image. And if I like say I like this better than this, so I will add just a touch, just to nudge it in that direction. I don't want to do anything too crazy, but just to give a little nudge. Like I like this better than this, so I will nudge that just a touch. And then the one that I don't like so much, I'll usually just take a touch out there. And then if we look at the before and the after, again, it's very subtle. We're not curing cancer here, unfortunately. The last photo I've got here, this is a standard wedding portrait. It's a close-up. These ones are the ones I will go in a little bit harder on with some of the more like small adjustments and those kinds of things. So look, we've got beautiful, even lighting. We've got soft sun in the background with some bokeh there. We've got some pretty flowers that I'm usually not a huge fan of, like really saturated color, but in this particular photo, it worked really well because her dress, very neutral, flower arrangement, very neutral. So I think we got away with adding like a little bit of color to this one. So I really appreciated that. Going over here to our white balance, I actually feel that this one is a little bit blue. She is in the shade, so that makes sense. You can play around with these like presets and stuff. I don't usually find that they work that well. You know what? Hey, maybe I'll eat my words, but I'm gonna make this a little warmer, and then I'm gonna add a little, her skin looks a touch on the green side there, so add a little bit more pink. That's looking pretty neutral. It looks really well exposed. I'm just getting some blown out kind of areas. So I'm just going to decrease the whites there a little bit. I'm going to bring down the white point too. Largely just stylistically wise, I like to bring back a little bit of that detail, which you can see up here. Shadows already look really good. I know that they're probably going to land somewhere about here, and then I am going to decrease the blacks just a smidgen. I'm a big believer in keeping things natural. Makeup artists on the day really do a great job, and I think a lot of the time if we're, you know, looking for like even skin tones and kind of that like, again, flawless look, 99% of the time, like the makeup kind of just does all that. So I don't do a ton of like heavy retouching. If someone has a pimple, I'll remove it, no worries. But I don't go in and make adjustments to people. I really don't like to do a lot of skin smoothing and those kinds of things because we all see ourselves differently, and who am I to say that something is an imperfection when that person might look at that as a beautiful part of themselves. So that's something that I always walk the line with. If somebody tells me that they have a preference for like more heavy retouching, absolutely. But I always lead with a little bit of caution in that area because we're all beautiful, okay? Even us with just big pimply pimples. I do go and zoom in just to make sure we don't have anything going on in terms of like, again, like pimples or blemishes and those kinds of things. And again, makeup is looking flawless. Usually for these photos here, I will go in and go to our detail. Something that I find helps give a nice kind of like smooth finish to a portrait is adding just a little bit of manual noise correction. I'm talking like 5 to 10, nothing crazy. It just adds like just a touch of smoothness to like the whole photo that I appreciate, as opposed to doing something like clarity or texture and those kinds of things. You can go in and brush in some clarity and texture if you are looking to do something a little bit more heavy-handed with the touch up there. But again, today, keeping it nice and natural. Again, gonna grab our little bit of our black fade here. Go to 10, and just without the curve and with the curve. Very subtle, looks nice and smooth. I love it. Now, her skin tone already looks great. I'm not touching the orange or red at all. I do want to have a little bit of fun with the yellow. This is more of a sunset scene, so I'm going to warm those yellows up a little bit. Nothing crazy, again. And then these greens, I also want to just nudge over a little bit to the yellow side. Not a ton of blue in this photo. Yeah, just in that veil, that's what I thought. So I'm going to desaturate this quite heavily. And then I'm also going to bring down our yellows a little bit, greens a little bit more. Maybe something like that. Not much aqua in this photo either. And then the next question would be just looking at our kind of purple and magenta, seeing if I want to take any of that out. I'm going to take the purple down just a little and then take the magenta maybe down just a touch as well. I'm actually going to add a little bit of green back in because I miss it. For detail, this one is more important than the other ones because we are right up on our subject. I turned the masking up quite a bit for this one, kind of like 80 to 90, because I don't want to over sharpen the details in the background. Like I really do want her to be the focus. And I am looking at it here. The skin tone is looking a touch green to my eye, so I'm going to just do a point color right there, and I'm just going to shift this just a little bit, and then just going here through lens corrections already applied. I don't see chromatic aberration. I don't see color. That would actually be terrible for photography. Okay, so I'm gonna select my background and I'm gonna darken it just a touch. This one can really get out of hand because you'll quickly notice like that the subject isn't in the same environment anymore, and it kind of looks a little bit green screeny. And so doing background adjustments are really good for color, but sometimes not other things. And actually just want a little bit more contrast as well. And we're whispering. This is very Bob Ross-esque. Beautiful. So here's our before and our after. Again, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Okay? We're editing nice photos. They look nice, they look even, they look well adjusted, and they're a little stylized, and that is freaking perfect. Okay, that's that. Gonna kick it back to non-editing Josh now. Now, usually I use my presets, which make this go a lot faster. For example, here's a quickie. Here's a duck. You can buy my preset pack at the link below if you'd like. I'm no gatekeeper, and if you have editing questions, please let me know in the comments. Happy to answer anything. I'm just a little guy. And that is my editing process. Hopefully you learned something, or at least were distracted from the rest of life that can feel so heavy sometimes. And until next time, bye.